Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently studying the scripture Mysticism of Srimad Bhagavatam. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let us get started. We are currently studying the avatars of Lord Vishnu, and yesterday we had completed the avatara of Lord Rama, and today we will study the mystical meaning of the avatara. Having assumed lesser levels of divine descent, the Supreme Self manifested as Lord Rama, a perfect human being, the delighter of hearts. Rama and Krishna are described as Purna avatars or full avatars. Further, Rama is described as Maryada Purushottam, which implies that Rama is setting an example to be followed by humanity. Although all avatars do outstep human limits to a certain extent, in Rama's case this was much more controlled. Rama does not readily assert his divinity, but always shows himself to be like everyone else, which implies humility. Yet the expression of immense power is always there in his personality. Since Lord Rama is one of the most adored of divine manifestations, the symbolism of his life covers the entire range of mystic movements in an aspirant. On the highest level of mystic understanding, Rama is Brahman, the absolute self. On the relative plane, Rama is Lord Vishnu, the absolute with form and qualities. He appears as an incarnation or avatara of God and as an object of devout meditation for the devotee. In addition, Rama represents the jiva or individual soul which has entered the forest of the world process and struggles to overcome Maya, cosmic illusion, and attain liberation. This soul is born to King Dashratha, an individual who is very virtuous, yet bound by the body and limited personality, and to the queen mothers who represent the three gunas or modes of the mind: sattva, purity or harmony; rajas, activity and externalization; and tamas, dullness, inertia, extreme negativity. Nourished by the mothers and loved by the father, the soul evolves and struggles to discover its essential identity. The soul, Rama, evolves in a personality which is a blend of four aspects: wisdom, jnana, will, dhyana, action, karma, and devotional feeling, bhakti. These are represented respectively by Rama, Lakshmana, Shatrughna, and Bharata. Breaking Shiva's bow is a turning point in human life. That bow of Shiva represents a subtle illusion in the mind which keeps one glued to the sense of individuality and leads one through endless cycles of birth and death, the path of Pravritti Marga. If one were to break that illusion, he would begin to tread the path of Nivritti, the path that leads to liberation. The moment one makes a resolve to become free of the bondage of individuality and attain liberation, Rama, the emergent soul within him, has broken Shiva's bow and has been wedded to Sita, the purified intellect. Rama had to enter into forest life for 14 years before he could return to Ayodhya and be enthroned as king. This was necessary if he were to fulfill the objective of his embodiment, the destruction of demons. In one spiritual movement, there is a similar unfoldment. Although Rama abides at every moment in one's heart, one cannot enthrone him or become one with his glorious presence until the demons that abide in the forest and cities of the unconscious are destroyed by a deep-rooted transformation within one's personality. The encounter with Sharupnakha, the sister of the demon king Ravana, has interesting mystic implications. In confronting all developments in life, an aspirant has two choices: Shreya, which is good or pure, represented by Sita, or Preya, that which is alluring or pleasing but impure, represented by Shrupnakha. The cutting off of the nose and ears of the demoness is symbolic of the development of Vairagya, dispassion, and Viveka, discrimination between the self and the not self. In order to find and recover the kidnapped Sita, Rama befriends the monkeys and bears. This represents that phase of spiritual movement where an aspirant learns to practice pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses and control of the mind. The pranic energy operating at the plane of the senses and mind can be compared to monkeys and bears. Without Rama, without a divine mission, those energies simply wander without purpose through the forest of the world process. But when Rama befriends them, all those energies are unified in a powerful mystical mission that greatly aids to one's spiritual evolution. Hanumanji represents the immense spiritual force that is known as Atmabal or soul force. He represents sadhana shakti, the power generated by intense spiritual discipline, and also brahmacharya shakti, the power of purity that results from the restraint of passion and the lessening of one's identification with the body idea. If we enter into the unconscious during meditation, Hanumanji goes with us and brings about a tremendous change. Like Hanumanji's fiery destruction of most of Lanka before the arrival of Rama, the soul forces within us wipes out myriad negative impressions and enables us to cross the ocean of illusion and enter into the place where the basis of ignorance abides. So that is what we have to do. The journey is difficult, but we have to break the unconscious demons. Ravana, with the 10 indriyas, 5 senses and 5 organs of actions as his head, represents Rajas, predominating ignorance. Ignorance that is active, restless, distractive. His brother Kumbhakarna represents tamas predominated ignorance, ignorance that is dull, melancholy, and extremely negative. And Vibhishana represents sattva predominating ignorance, ignorance that is pure and more healthy. In the course of spiritual movement, the soul must befriend sattva and enlist its assistance in fighting against rajas and tamas. Though sattva belongs to the world of the demons of duality, yet one is led to self-realization through its help. Just like Vibhishana was needed to help Lord Rama, Vibhishana represents sattva. The confrontation of Rama with Ravana is the last confrontation in the spiritual movement. All demoniac forces that harass the individual and humanity at large emanate from that avidya or ignorance. Therefore, when one fights against ignorance, it is his last fight, and there is no fight like it. Further, Rama's annihilation of Ravana symbolizes the ascent of Kundalini as it destroys the knot of karma, the knot of desire, and ultimately the knot of ignorance on its way to the crown of the head where enlightenment is complete. Thus the soul is reunited with Sita Ji, the intuitive intellect which has been kidnapped by ignorance, and it discovers its own essential nature. Then, like Rama and Sita reigning blissfully together for thousands of years, Rama Rajya reigns within the personality of an enlightened sage. This represents the state of Jivan Mukti or liberation in life. However, when the prarabdha karma or fructifying karma of a sage terminates and he is ready to enter into videha mukti, which means bodiless liberation, even intuitional intellect is no longer needed. Thus Sita departs and Rama remains alone as the non-dual Brahman or Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.